I want to welcome everyone today. Thank you for attending Gouresh's Thesis to us. He's been working on this for a little while, a number of different projects. And so we'll follow the standard protocol. If you have questions, just let him know. Throughout his presentation, we'll take questions and answers afterwards. And then after a while, we'll meet as a committee to excuse him from the meeting regarding that and let them know how things are going to go from there. So, Gouresh, go ahead. We'll let you get started now.
Yeah, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining in today. It's probably the last presentation I'll make for my master's. And this is for my thesis. This is the defense. So the topic of my defense thesis is do physical outcome measures of force and velocity correlate well with rating of tennis performance in collegiate tennis players? I would like to welcome and also thank Dr. Michael W. Olson, who is the chair of my committee. Then other committee members, Dr. Frank White and Dr. Brett Clausen from the Department of Athletic Training and Exercise Physiology at Midwestern State University. A few of the acknowledgements before we start. Again, Dr. Michael Olson for helping me with this. We have been working on this for the last 2 years. Then Dr. White and Dr. Crossland is also have given me enough guidance about my thesis and also poster presentations that I did for my pilot studies. Then again, Kelsey Bruce, who is the head coach for women's cross country and track and field. She gave me enough space to work on my thesis while I was a GA for her. Scott Lynn, which is the head coach for men's and women's tennis, he allowed me to have his team take time and be a participant in my study. Then MSU men's and women's tennis team, again, thank you for them for being so well participants in my study. They gave their all to have the right results. Again, friends and my parents were present today to watch me defend my thesis. Moving forward, we're going to cover a table of contents, a list of abbreviations. I have posted that in the group chat, so I'm not going to go over that in detail. Introduction, then we're going to go through the literature review, methodology, participants, study design, measurements, statistical analysis, results, discussion, and references. So this is the list of abbreviations. It's in the chat. If you have any doubts about that, you can go over that and look at it. I'll also explain it in detail when I go over these terms. So introduction. Firstly, this study is all around tennis. Tennis is the base of this study. And why tennis? Because we have a great tennis team at MSU for years to come. And in the past years too. So that's why it was a really interesting topic for me. I have friends in the tennis team, so it was really interesting for me to dive into tennis more because that's one of the sports that I have never got into. I was a track sprinter, so this was a really interesting study for me. I was able to learn more about tennis. One of the first things I found out is tennis is one of the most watched sports with billions of fans across the globes. So this was a really good study for me to know because there's a lot of people who know about tennis. I also knew that tennis is introduced very early in people's lives. Like people start playing tennis at the age of 5, 6, which is really early for any kind of sports to be played. But for tennis, you have to start really early because the studies have been done on tennis players, and it sees that by the age they get into college, they already have 10, 15 years of experience at hand. So you have to start early with tennis. It involves a lot of high-speed serves, reactive ground strokes, extremely agile movements, and this has been proven in studies that these things are really important for tennis tournament. The involvement of many variables make it unpredictable to the viewer. So there's not a predictable thing you can see in tennis. Like there's all kinds of athletes that win. There's all kinds of types of body types that can win the tennis game. So there's different variables, not a certain characteristics of your body or certain characteristics of your strength or power can determine the results of the game. Now, performance. What is performance? Well, how do you measure performance, and what kind of performance do you need in tennis? So first of all, the two most important factors in tennis that you need if you're a tennis player is power and agility. Those are the two most important factors. The next thing, technically, is the serve. Serve is the one of the most important things that you need to learn if you're a tennis player. Without a good serve, you're basically below average tennis. So you have to have a high speed serve, and to be able to do a good serve, you need upper arm internal rotation, wrist flexion, upper arm horizontal adduction, and forearm pronation. So these are all the combination of the movements that happening in one of your hands to be able to execute the best serve that you can. And this has been proved by in the studies that all of this things that you need when you do a serve. UTR, so we talked about the serve, we talked about the what kind of performance factors that influence a game. We talked about the serve. UTR, so UTR is Universal Tennis Rating. In 2008, people came up together. UTR is a private company to find out what they can do to create a universal rating for tennis to measure the performance because tennis is an international game. It's not restricted to a country or it's not restricted to a certain region of the world. It's an international game. Many people play it. And there have been a lot of studies been done in junior athletes, but not a lot of studies been done in collegiate athletes. So that's why they had to come up with UTR, which is a rating for tennis players, and anybody from the age of 5 to all the way up to the age of 60 can be a tennis player and they can have a UTR rating. Now the UTR is based on competition, scores, opponents, win, lose history. So the algorithm is very deep. They have made a good algorithm for UTR, and there's been a lot of studies been done on UTR of its accuracy. It's based on 16-point scale. So the more your number, the better you are. The top athletes in the world are close to 14, 15, and one of the most interesting things about UTR it puts both men and women on the same scale. So the one thing I found out at MSU is the men's team has the UTR around 11 to 12, and the women's team has a UTR about 8 to 9. So it makes it really easy for the viewers to know, okay, where is the player is. It's basically like track when you have a time. If you're running 11 seconds or if you're running 10 seconds, you know it's on the spectrum where you are. It's more comparable like that. So that's why I was able to compare both UTRs for men and women in this study. Uh, Again, UTR started in 2008, and as the years grew, it became bigger and bigger and bigger, and there were a lot of countries, about 195 countries were using UTR at the end of 2022. And because of that, they kind of had a monopoly over the competitions too. They used to sponsor competitions, and as always, the Tennis Federation didn't like that, so they had their own number which is called the World Tennis Number. They kind of officially introduced it in 2023. Uh, the WTN also uses a sophisticated mathematical calculation that is similar to rating systems used in chess and video games. So they also try to use a deep algorithm for the WTN. WTN is kind of different than the UTR. It's a 40-point scale and it goes below. So lower the number, the better the performer you are. UTR, it's more the number, higher the number, the better the performer you are. So it's kind of contradicts, both numbers are contradictory. So there's conflict between whether to use UTR or WTN. So this study, we're going to find out which one is better than the other one. What's the accuracy between both of them compared to other factors, which are serve or the strength levels. So to measure the strength level, we're gonna go into the isokinetic strength testing. We have done literature review on isometric and isokinetic, and chose to go with isokinetic because they have better correlation with the tennis performance. That has been found, and isokinetic testing is being used by physical therapists and athletic trainers to for figure out the injury potential and also know the physical characteristics of an injury. So it has been used in the medical field, but it needs to be used for more performance profiling field too. There's only very few studies that look at the relationship between the isokinetic strength and stroke velocity. So again, we're gonna look into those relationships again in this study. Now, why are we doing this study? Coaches and federations need variables that are easy to measure due to time constraints because tennis coaches are pretty busy year around. They are always going on travel with the team, so it's really hard for them to know the performance level of the athlete. So we have to find out a testing battery which is easy to measure and it's not really time consuming in the absence of rating system. So, for example, if WTN, if ITF bans UTR in the future, there's gonna be athletes who don't have a WTN rating. So, a battery test is important to be conducted if the rating system is not accurate, as we find. Simple testing that correlates with complex testing. So, for example, simple testing is med ball throws or serves, and complex testing is isokinetic testing. Sports medicine staff will also be able to use it. So, for example, they're already using different movements to assess the injury potential of certain movement. They will be also be able to use this study to prevent the injuries and use the rehabilitation strategies. So, based on the introduction, the purpose of the study was to establish relationships between strength, which is isokinetic strength, counter movement jump, CMJ, med ball throws, universal tennis rating, UTR, world tennis number, WTN, and stroke velocity for ground strokes, backhand, forehand, and serve in collegiate tennis players. Now going into more detail into literature review. So starting with the performance testing profiles in tennis. Bush ETL in 2002 found that the technical, tactical, physical, and mental elements of the training were equally influenced by quantity, quality, intensity, and recovery. So in any sports, you know that all of these needs to come together where you're tactically, physically, and mentally and technically fit to be able to perform. But what factors do those influence those factors, which is technical, tactical, physical, and mental, which is there's has to be done with the training. There has to be done with how you perceive practice. So those kind of stuff they find out is it's all complex. In 2014, Fernandez found that several testing protocols, he kind of suggested testing protocols for tennis players, which included aerobic and anaerobic testing batteries to strength and power tests. He also suggested specifically to use the isokinetic testing because isokinetic is more open chain than the isometric testing. We're gonna look more into the comparisons between isometric and isokinetic. For lower body power testing, the jumping protocols have been used by most of the studies in the past, which is Bonato in 2015, Girard in 2009, and Ulbrich in 2016. They used the jumping protocols for testing the lower body power. For the upper body power, medicine ball throws had been used by Kramer and Ulbrich in both 2017 and 2014, respectively. So the testing profiles have been used and there have been suggestions to what to use. Now we're gonna break it down into how each of those testing suggestions have been looked at into the research. First thing to come is the serves and ground strokes. So as I just suggested, as I mentioned before, that's where tennis starts and ends. It starts with a serve and it ends with a ground stroke when you win a point. So these are the most important factors in a tennis game. Every coach coaches serve and tennis. And after that, everything comes, which is the run in between. So the researchers had to do research on serves and ground strokes. So in 2014, Cools did a study in which he found out that shoulders and scapula undergo sport-specific adaptations in glenohumeral internal rotation range of motion, rotator cuff strength measures, and scapular upper rotation. So basically what it's saying is as you keep playing, because people start playing tennis at really early age, at the age of 5. So when you get to the college level, there have been adaptations made already in your shoulders. So your body adapts to the demands that you place on it. So basically what he found out is there have been adaptations in the shoulder internal rotations, rotator cuff strength, and scapular upper rotation. Uh, so Elliott in 1995 also finds kind of similar results, which he found that the major contributors for the velocity of the racket head was upper arm internal rotation, hand flexion, horizontal flexion, abduction of the upper arm, and racket shoulder linear velocity. So I'm mentioning these movement patterns because we're going to use these movement patterns when we test the strength levels of the athletes, and we're trying to correlate these movement patterns to different testing batteries that we're going to do. Also, similarly, in 2003, Bahamonde also found that forehand stroke, the largest torques that were produced was through the shoulder horizontal adductors, elbow wars, and shoulder internal rotation. So it's kind of things like this we're gonna use when we test the players uh, as we go along in the presentation, and you will see how all of the studies match with what we have done in the study. Going forward, again, strength testing with isometric or isokinetic. So which testing to go with? So Baggett in 2016 found positive correlation between isometric shoulder internal rotation, but he did not find any other correlation between any other movement. So only thing that she used, so he used other movements that I mentioned, but there was no significant correlation between that. And the reason that he gave was the restrictive nature of the isometric testing, because what you're basically doing is holding your limb in a place and trying to exert pressure to move, and that's where you get the isometric testing. Colomer has a different idea. In 2020, he also find no correlation between isometric strength measures and serve velocity, which kind of also solidifies that isometric testing is not good for testing the strength of the tennis players. Uh, 2004, Perry found positive significant correlation between the ball velocity and the isokinetic measures. So we have studies, also Signaral in 2005 concluded that ball velocity can be predicted with isokinetic measures. So we have studies where you didn't find any significant correlation between the isometric testing and the ball velocity or tennis performance, and we have studies where you find a positive correlation between the ball velocity and the isokinetic testing. That's why we went with the isokinetic testing in this study. Counter movement jump, Girard in 2009 did study between counter movement jump, squat jumps, drop jump, and tennis performance, and had a significant relationship between tennis performance. In 2018, Hayes analyzed and found positive significant correlation between counter movement jump, height, and serve velocity. Again, in 2015, Bonato also find there was no results between counter movement jump and the tennis performance, which is jumping performance. So again, there's conflicting studies start occurring between that. And Ulbrich in 2016 also find no significant results between a counter movement jump and serve velocity. So again, just like the isokinetic and isometric, we have two studies who did not find any correlation between the jump performance and the tennis performance. And there's two studies who find relationship between the jump performance and the tennis performance. So we're gonna try to break it down since there's a conflict in research, and we're gonna try to find either solidify that there is no relationship between the jumps or the performance, or solidify that there is a relationship. Power testing, we did medicine ball throws. Ulbrich in 2016 find positive correlation between overhead, forehand, and backhand, med ball throws, and tennis performance. And Kramer in 2017 found upper body power, which was tested by MBTs, which was also correlated with tennis performance. Fed 2018 found MBTs were closely related with serve velocity. So there have been studies, there have been no studies that I found that didn't find any correlation between the MBTs and the tennis performance. So the literature tells us that the med ball throws are highly correlated with tennis performance, and this study we're trying to solidify that it is true. Like we're trying to find out if it still works with it, because these studies have been done with the junior athletes. We are testing the collegiate athletes, so we're kind of using a different subject size to see if this studies also work with collegiate athletes. Tennis rankings. Now this has been a new topic for researchers. So the studies you see are really recent. So in 2023, Mayu found that UTR and WTN ratings are highly correlated. So both of these in 2023 were highly correlated. But what happened in December 2023, there have been changes in the algorithm for WTN. They try to make it better. So crawl in 2024, and this was the most recent study I could find on WTN. This was published in March of 2024, so barely a month ago. He examined the impact of the algorithm change for for WTN in December, and he found out that there was no differences. So whatever they did in December, it didn't change the accuracy of the WTN. Their thought was they were gonna increase the accuracy, but it did not increase it. So there was no differences. So any studies that we see between the UTR from the past and WTN, they're still valid, even with the algorithm change of 2020, December 2023. So that was the literature review. So moving on to what we did with the participants. So we used 13 players from the Midwestern State University men's and women's tennis team, with the mean and standard deviation of age 19.69 plus minus 0.94 years. So they were around 20 years of age. Training age was 11.34 years plus minus 2.7 years. So you can see that the training age, these people are 20 years old, and they already have a training age about 11 to 13 years. So they started really early, like I said before. Height was between 173 plus minus 9.34 centimeters. Body mass of 66.88 plus minus 9.94 kilograms. And BMI was 19.21 plus minus 1.92. So these were really fit athletes based on the BMI. The inclusion criteria that we used was the age needs to be between 18 to 23, since we used the college athletes. The age was no issue, but we still had that inclusion criteria in there. Training age was between 10 to 12 years. So as you can see, most of the athletes passed that because of the amount of training that when they started playing. There were student athletes, so that was another inclusion criteria because the study was done in MSU. Total of 13 subjects were needed for the study, with the alpha level of set at 0.05, effect size of 0.7, and power of 0.80 with two tails. So even before the study started, we did a statistical analysis of how many subjects do we need to match the effect size and the power, with the set alpha, which was at 0.05, which is statistically significant. And we found out that we need 13 subjects, and we got 13 subjects. So this study, any results that we find in the study are statistically significant to the alpha level of 0.05. The exclusion criteria was there was the medical history with upper body surgery, joint pain, rehabilitation in past 12 months. So if you had anything, you were excluded. So there were about four players from the team that we had to exclude because of the injuries that they sustained in the past 12 months. The study was approved by the Institutional Review Board of Midwestern State University, Texas. The design of the study was cross-sectional study. Data was collected within 4 weeks of the in-season of the tennis players, so they were in their peak performance when we tested them. 2 sessions were conducted. First session was the laboratory session, and the second session was the on-court session. Both sessions were separated by 24 hours. For laboratory session, there was a 5 minute of warm up on treadmill at self-selected speeds and upper extremity mobility exercises. Only the dominant arm was tested. So when they came to the lab, we only told them to warm up at their self-selected speeds for 5 minutes, and that was it, with a few of the mobility exercises that they chose by themselves. When we went to the court, we did the similar kind of mobility exercises for upper extremity, and then we also did six serves, six forehands, and six backhands as a warm up before they went on to the testing. So these were the warm up sessions that they had to conduct before they went into the full on testing.
Gouresh,
Yeah, go ahead.
can you go back to that last slide?
Yeah.
Were the two sessions always in this sequence, or were they randomly assigned?
It was random. Yeah, good question. It was random, based on based on they were assigned. So some people, and I don't know the exact number, we did not divide them equally. Some people were assigned on-course session, say the day before, and some people did the lab session the day after.
Okay,
But it was we structured it where it was like the days were not stressful training wise, so there was no effect on we tried to make it there was no effect on when they tested with us, but it was randomly assigned to them.
so one wouldn't influence the other. Is that what you're saying?
What either that or
Yeah,
the training wouldn't influence the any. For example, like say
gotcha.
Monday they did the lab session and they had a strong day for training, and on Tuesday they had a court session where they didn't have any strong days for training. What we tried to do is we would test them on a similar occasions
Mhm.
where the if the lab session was a strong day of training, the lab session would fall on the strong day of training whenever we
Gotcha,
tested them, you know?
gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
All right, thank you. So the design for the study, so lab session, we're gonna go deeper into what we did in the lab. So first, as soon as they got into the lab, we got the data for their height, their mass, their chronological age, their training age, and their dominant limb length. So we did the limb length just so to find out if there's any differences in the limb length. But at the end of it, when we did the mean and standard deviation, there was not a lot of differences between the limb length that they had. And since the isokinetic testing was done on them, uh we didn't find any statistical differences between them, and I'll explain that when we go more in deep with the statistical differences. uh Two trials were conducted for four total movements. So the isokinetic strength was done in 8 different movements on the Biodex system 3 dynamometer, and the speed was, apologies, the speed was 60 degree per second. Then after that, when they finished with that, we went on to do the three counter movement jumps for height on the Force platform with Net4 software. So there was only two things that we did when they got to the lab. We did the isokinetic testing, which took about 30 to 45 minutes, and then we went on with the counter movement jumps, which took about 10 to 15 minutes. So the whole session, lab session, was about an hour long for them. Encore session, we did six serves, six forehand, six double backhand. And again, this was randomized. It was not in the same order as they started with the forehand, they started with the double backhand, or they would start with the serve. It was randomized based on the chart that we drawn for them. Again, distance for two trials were done for med ball throws, which was overhead, forehand, backhand. Again, same thing, randomized. We had a chart for everybody, and based on the chart, we had like a total of, I think, since the encore session has 6 different variables, we would randomize it based on, I use a online software to randomize 6 different motions for that. Study design, the alpha was set up at p less than 0.05, as I mentioned before. To break it down more, the R value, which was Pearson correlation, was set at 0.576. For p equals to 0.05. R was set up at 0.658 for p equals to 0.02, and R equals 0.708 for p equaling 0.01. These values were brought up based on the uh, freedom of the subject size. So since we had a 13 subject size, we used that to get the Pearson correlation values for every p. Uh, the use of pain relieving medication or other medical strategies was not allowed to influence on the results of the study. So foam rolling, massages, eyes, we tried to control all of these aspects of it. And like I said, we tried to do the study on the days that they had no rest. So one of the days when the coach Lynn gave them a rest, we tested most of the athletes on that day. So this was basically kind of trying to avoid any influence from the training or any influence of the other strategies that the athletes use. Any prescribed medication that they had, we noted it down, but most of the athletes didn't have any prescribed medication. If they had any prescribed medication, or basically if they were ill, we just excluded those athletes completely from the study. These are the 8 movements that we did in the lab, starting with the shoulder internal rotation with shoulder flexion, which was 90 degrees, and elbow flexion was 90 degrees. And that was one movement, which was they would do shoulder internal rotation, and at the same time, they would go ahead and do shoulder external rotation. Similarly, that was true for shoulder horizontal adduction, in which the shoulder was abducted at 90 degrees, and shoulder horizontal abduction with shoulder abducted at 90 degrees. So same movement, one movement total. They did the adduction, and at the same time, after they finished with adduction, they went on to do abduction, which was 1 rep. Wrist flexion and extension, again, one movement, 1 rep. With that, we would get 2 data points from that. Then we did wrist pronations and supinations. So 4 movements, 4 movements, but there were 8 different type of activities that they did in those 4 movements. We went on to the setup of so these are the athletes that we had from the tennis team that we set it up as for you guys to know like how we set it up. So it was 90-degree hip flexion and the back strap with 2 diagonal harnesses to the back of the seat, so you can see the straps on in the pictures. We only used the dominant arm, which was the right arm for most of them. We had 2 athletes with the left arm too, so but we figured it out how to set it up. 5 reps and 2 sets. So every movement that I just mentioned, they did 2 sets on that, and they did 5 reps. When we did the stats, we only used 3 in between. We excluded the first one and we excluded the last one, because we tried to take away the first rep, which is kind of getting familiar with the movement, and the last rep was kind of we didn't want any fatigue to interfere with the result. That's why we only took 3 in between. The rest was 1 minute, which was more than enough. We kept asking the players if they need more rest, but most of them were ready within 30 seconds. The rest between the positions was 2 minutes. It took me 2 minutes to set up and break it down and put it back up. So it was good that we had it 2 minutes, and players were well rested in between. Speed of the movement 60 degrees per second, and we tested peak and average torques through the Biodex dynamometer. Counter movement jump done on the force plates. This is not the athlete, but this is how the counter movement jump was done, with the hands on your waist, and we instructed them to jump as high and fast as possible. The rest was 1 minute, so this was done pretty quickly. On-course sessions, moving on to the med ball throws. 3 types of med ball throws were done: overhead med ball throws, forehand med ball throws, and backhand med ball throws. Med ball were masses of 2 kilograms. They were instructed to throw as far as possible with both hands on the med ball and without using legs for momentum or jumping. This was a trial that he did, but this was a good picture, so I took it. But basically you only use your arms and a little bit of your legs to throw it away, but all you wanted was the upper body strength, nothing with the lower body strength. We're just trying to assess the upper body strength with that. Rest between the throws was 30 seconds, and the rest between the position was 2 minutes. Stroke velocity, there were 6 serves, 6 forehand, and 6 backhand strokes. For ground strokes, the ball was served to the players at 25 miles per hour by a coaching staff. we try to maintain it between plus and minus 2 miles per hour, not more than that. So 25 miles per hour was an average velocity that the ball was served to them. The only serve that were counted towards the total number of serves. So we try to keep the accuracy of the serves. You cannot just go and hit it anywhere you want. It has to be in. Peak velocity was measured using a handheld radar gun. And the radar was positioned 2 meters behind the player at an approximate height of 1.5 meters. And we found this from the research that how the other researchers did the ball velocity. Data processing. So we had all the data to be processed and analyzed in Microsoft Excel 2013. So which was everything that has to do with the serves, the med balls. We put all of that into the Microsoft Excel as we started. The data from isokinetic dynamometer was filtered through a 3 Hz zero lag digital fourth order Butterworth low pass filter. So we filtered the data that we got from the isokinetic dynamometer. Same thing we did with the force plate data that we got from the force platforms. We filtered the data through a 60 Hz zero lag digital fourth order Butterworth low pass filter. So both of the data were filtered and then put into the Microsoft Excel. After filtering the data was further analyzed in Microsoft Excel. We used different software uh, in the background, like Visual Basics, to extract the data that we needed from all the data points. As soon as we got the data that we needed to do the statistical analysis on that, we used the SPSS software given to us by IBM. And then all the data was presented as mean and standard deviation. We used, as I mentioned before, and we used the Pearson correlation, which was two-tailed, to assess the relationship between the variables, primarily the isokinetic CMJ, stroke velocities, med ball throws, and UTR, WTN. The alpha was set up at p less than 0.05, and the r values, as I mentioned before. Again, the one extra thing that we did, because the question was raised, we did a univariate analysis of variance on the strength differences, throw differences, and stroke speed differences between men and women, because we saw there were differences between both of the performance, and we tried to find out if those differences will matter when we combine the results and try to present the study.
So,
So these were the
Gouresh,
yeah, go ahead.
On the
Yeah,
previous slide. So I know this is kind of nitpicky, but
no, yeah, go ahead.
if you got an alpha level of 0.05, is that significant?
Well, based on the study that we did, like I said, it was set at less than 0.05,
Okay.
and we tried to keep it less than 0.05. Like you can see that the R values,
Yeah.
the most of the studies, that's why we break it down into more the alpha level. So first thing was R equals 0.576, which was P equals to 0.05. But then we also broke it down to uh R equals to 0.658, which was P equaling 0.02. So we still made it more and more significant. But I think what we try to do is anything the R value, anything more than this, we try to make it significant. So to answer your question,
Yeah,
uh, yeah,
I'm just saying that, usually what you'll see, and this is, you can do it however you want to do it, but usually you'll see alpha set up as less than or equal to.
yeah, yeah, that's exactly. So like I said, it was set less than 0.05, and
Yeah.
that's what we try to do is set it below 0.05, even if it says so these values, like I know where you're confused, like alpha is set up as P less than 0.05, and I'm giving you values where it says R equals 0.567 and P equals to 0.05.
Yeah.
But what we did is we got if the R value is 0.577, that's where we reported it as significant. We didn't report it
Yeah.
anything that's 0.576 or below to be significant. Similarly, so alpha is set up as less than 0.05 in this
I'm
study.
just saying that if you set it up as less less than 0.05, then
Yeah.
if you get a correlation that is 0.05, then you have to stipulate that it's not significantly that it's not significant.
Right. Yeah. We did that. Anything
Okay. All right.
more than 0.05, we stipulated that it's not significant in the
Or
study.
equal to.
Yeah, or equal to. Yep.
Okay. All right. Just wanted clarification.
Yeah. You will see that. That's why we have this value here is if you see the R at 0.576, it's not significant. Anything above that is significant.
Gotcha.
That's how we set it up. Yeah, that's why I mentioned those numbers there. But yeah,
Okay.
good question. And
Thank
you'll
you.
see it. So in the results, like you can see that so P less than 0.05, you can see the pluses right there. So it's negative 0.606, uh 0.585. So
Mhm.
we yeah, you can see that right there
Okay.
in the results. You can see 1 star, which is P is less than 0.02. You can see that 1 star in here, which is kind of more than what I mentioned to you. This is less than 0.02. And then P is less than 0.01. You can see there's 2 stars right
Okay,
there,
so
which is
Gouresh.
yeah,
So what you're saying is that as the strength of the relationships increased, you
right.
happen to see a reduction in the p-value for the significance. Is that correct?
Yep, yeah, that's
Okay.
exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. So that needs to be addressed a little bit differently. That's
Okay.
what Dr. thinks. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. I'll try to like mention this more accurately in here, but I thought that just addressing it this way would suffice. But
No,
I
yeah.
get your question. Yeah, I get your question. How
Yeah,
it
you're
is.
good. Yeah, you
Yeah.
explained it quite well, Gouresh. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, and I'll explain it in the discussions. You'll kind of see like what I mean when I do those results. But yeah, good question, good query that you raised. So these were the isokinetic results that we did against the serve, forehand, backhand, UTR, WTN, and we also gave the mean and standard deviations. Now I'll kind of dive more into the results here. And again, these results that we did were between the overhead med ball throws, counter movement jump, stroke velocity, forehand, backhand, UTR, WTN against each other, kind of. So try to figure out how they correlate with each other too in this study. So last part, which is discussion, the purpose of the whole study was to find a relationship between the isokinetic strength, CMJ, med ball throws, UTR, WTN, stroke velocity for ground strokes, and the serve in tennis players. Really good study. Took us 2 years to get to this point. The results of the study that we did indicated that forehand, UTR, WTN had a strong relationship with all types of med ball throws. Uh, all of them. For example, even if it's overhead, then the forehand, backhand, all of them are highly correlated with the forehand, serve, UTR, and WTN. So I would suggest like, and it kind of also goes on with the study that other people did, which shows like Ulbrich in 2016, Kramer in 2017, Fett in 2018, also find similar results that the med ball throws correlate with tennis performance. So coaches should go ahead and use med ball throws, which are pretty easy. It took us 5 minutes to do it. So I would suggest like coaches should test med ball throws if they need to test anything else. Isokinetic movements, shoulder internal rotation, external rotation, adduction, abduction, wrist supination, peak torque were seen highly correlated with the surf stroke velocity. So these movements, as you can see, that have been already been found correlated with the stroke velocity. All we did is test them on a isokinetic dynamometer. Like if you put a EMG on your internal rotation, like your shoulder, you'll find that these are already the motion that the tennis player uses during the serve. What we try to do is try to assess this inside the lab if they will correlate. because the serve is high speed. We try to slow it down to 60 degrees per second and find out, and we find good correlations based on the studies that have been done in the past. Um, Similarly, isokinetic moments of shoulder internal rotation, external rotation, wrist supination, peak torque were significantly correlated to forehand and stroke velocity. So you can kind of see that internal rotation and external rotation are the things that have been used basically by logic that have been used in the forehand strokes, backhand strokes, forehand strokes, and the serves. So it makes sense that they will be correlated with that, but all we did is slow it down to a control environment and try to find out if they still correlate. So I think it's really good for the physical therapist and the medical community to be able to assess the strength if an athlete is injured, rather than going and doing serves, they can test them on the isokinetic dynamometer to be more safe and control environment. One of the most surprising results that we found in the study was no variables was significantly correlated with the backhand stroke velocity. So backhand was not related to any of the variables. I think this can be explained by the complexity of the backhand. So there's two kinds of backhands. One is a one-hand backhand, there's a two-hand backhand, and different players use different backhands when they play. When we asked the players to perform a backhand, most of them preferred uh half of them preferred single hand, half of them preferred double hand. So it was kind of a awkward moment when we told them to only do the double hand backhand when they did a double hand backhand. So I think the half of them didn't like it, and it was a awkward moment for them, but half of them did like it because that's what they use in the training. So I think what the researchers need to do is look at the differences between the both of the backhands, if there's differences between a single hand or the double hand. So this is a question for future research to be done. The results of this study fairly support the results presented by Elliott in 1995 and the Bahamonde in 2003. So the results I'm mentioning, which is regarding the serve velocity and the forehand stroke, which were highly correlated with the isokinetic strength testing. Counter movement jump highly correlated with serve forehand UTR and WTN, which again contradicts the finding of Bonato in 2015 and Ulbrich in 2016, but align with the findings by Girard in 2009 and Hayes in 2018. So if you remember in the past, in the literature review, we find the contradicting results between different studies, but our study find a highly correlated relationship between the counter movement jumps and the tennis performance. UTR significantly correlated with the isokinetic measures besides the shoulder horizontal abduction, reflection, and supination. But you can also find out that these movements were not highly correlated with the serve. So either way, if you test the athletes on a isokinetic dynamometer for internal rotation, external rotation, you can also kind of correlate, make a list of athletes who's the top athlete and kind of figure out where they stand, even if there's no UTR. One of the most prominent results of the study was UTR was very high, significantly correlated, negatively correlated with WTN. So as I mentioned before, higher the number in UTR, the better the performer you are. Lower the number in WTN, the better the performance you have. That's why there is a negative correlation, but it's still highly significant. So that was the result that we're looking for, is the accuracy of the both these rating systems. So we find out you can use either one of them. Both of them are accurate. UTR is a little bit more accurate than the WTN. I think the R value for the correlation was about 0.946, which is really high for both of them. But UTR is still found to be more correlated with most of the more variables that we tested in the study than the WTN. But coaches can use both of them, and the results that we found, which supports the finding by Mayu in 2023, which also suggests that both of these ratings are highly correlated. WTN had a negative significant relationship with shoulder internal rotation, external rotation, wrist pronation, peak torque, and average torque. WTN was also correlated with one of the isokinetic strength measures that we mentioned before that are correlated with the serves. So I think the isokinetic strength measures is a good measure. I think coaches should do it once every semester just to find out, like, as soon as they get from the summer break, I think they should conduct one session of isokinetic measurements to find out where the strength levels are, rather than directly putting them into a competition environment where they can get injured. This was just a suggestion for coaches. They can do it first week. They can do all of these testings to figure out where the strength level of the athletes are. Again, we did the univariate analysis of variance, which is ANOVA. We did not find any significant strength differences between the throw differences, stroke differences between men and women. So in this study, we did not find any differences that would affect the results of the study between men and women. So in the conclusion, we can say that isokinetic movements that mimic on-court movements correlated well with the serve and forehand. So whenever coaches test, they should follow these movements that correlate with the serve, but are less prone to injury when you do it. Med ball throws can be used testing sessions, pretty easy to do, not time consuming. Just go out there, do a few med ball throws, and you can also use them for training. UTR, WTN, similar. You can use any one of them and you will be able to know your tennis performance with other players. Researchers and coaches should create tennis performance profiles. Researchers in the universities should help coaches create this performance profiles so they can better access, they can figure out, have a vision of how to train their athletes. Future studies should look into more in-depth performance variables that directly tie to game outcome and address multifactorial nature of the variables. So, for example, backhand stroke, they should add a both type of backhand stroke, which is the single hand and the double hand. So that was these are my references. These are all the references that I used for the study. And thank you all for taking your time for this study. If there are any questions, first, I think the committee is going to start by asking questions. And after that, everybody else can ask me questions. I can go back to any slide you want. Keep it at the conclusion.
Thank you, Gouresh. As Gouresh mentioned, any questions that the committee may have to begin with, results, discussion, anything like that, methodology.
Good job, Gouresh. Just not so much a question, but a quick hypothesis. So with the backhand, do you think your choice of isokinetic testing, if you would have changed to maybe a particular different test, you might have seen some stronger correlations with backhand?
That's what I was saying. Like, half the people wanted to do double hand and half the people wanted to do single hand. So results could be the same or results could be different. I would say we went with the double hand because the med ball throw, backhand med ball throw was double hand. So it kind of correlated with the whole study. If we did single hand, it could be different. But I'm saying again, if we did a single hand, half the people were not used to doing single hand. And I think based on the coaching staff that mentioned to me, I think the single hand is more difficult to learn than double hand. Double hand is more stable, and it's more doable than doing a single hand. So I think we found better results with the double hand. But again, as I mentioned, it's interesting research to do it, where you test both double hand and single hand.
You think there could potentially be a movement on the isokinetic dynamometer that could measure both of them and relatively accurately? If you had to, I mean, I'm just if you we
Yeah,
could find
I think that was the whole point of the study, is trying to find out which movement correlates with dynamometer. And based on the movements that we use for which are most of the major movements, like we basically use all the movements that shoulder joint does when they do those motions. So I think where we missed is I think they need to do like a standing isokinetic testing where you're like kind of a doing uh, uh back face, something that kind of mimics the backhand more, like kind of doing trunk rotation. I think backhand more has to do with trunk movement than has to do with more shoulder movement,
Okay.
because I think you have to twist your trunk more than I think you're using your shoulders a little bit more. I think that I hope that makes sense a little bit.
No, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
like even with the medicine ball throw, you said not to use the lower body, but how do you not somehow use the muscles of the lower body to somehow neutralize or fix the system and try to ensure that the movement can be occurring, right?
Right. Right.
And so,
Yeah.
so you're looking at a little bit. You're just looking at the upper extremity in the laboratory, which is difficult to mimic. When you actually get into performance, because then you have other things that are going on. As you mentioned, it comes from the feet up
Right.
as the transfer of energy is occurring.
Right.
Then it also goes into, okay, could you look at the rate at which the movements were occurring on the dynamometer? Was that an influence in determining things?
Right.
If you go
Right.
faster with the movements, would you have seen differences in the correlations too?
Yeah, so I think I read a study on that. They in one study they used five different kinds of speeds on the isokinetic dynamometer. It was in radian. I think what they found out, and it was a similar movements that we did. I think they found out is the speed between 1.57 radians to 3.59 radians is can correlate to serves better. That's why we went with I think 60 degree per second speed, which is between 1.57 to 3.59 radians. So I think to answer your question, there already has study been done on that, and they that's why we went with the 60 degree per second, just because that's the range that showed the best correlation between all the motions that we did,
So
because
what was
I
that? What was that upper limit in radians?
3.59 radians per
So
second.
greater than 180 degrees per second, correct?
Uh
Pi is
yes.
180. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah, close,
So
close,
we
close.
probably could have gone up to at least 180,
A little
right?
bit more, yeah. But
Yeah.
but here's the thing, like we kept it down to 60 degree per second because I want the medical like physical therapists to also use it. And in the research I found out that the most common speed that they use is 60 degree per second, just because it's safer if there's an injury. So because like I think the more uh if you increase the speed more, I think it's logical to think that it will get correlated well, because we're getting closer and closer and closer to the speed of the movement that they actually do on the performance. So it's
Yeah.
better to find out the lowest speed that you can find
Okay.
that correlates with the performance on the court, because you're trying to like minimize the injury level.
Okay. Okay. Well, here's the thing. You are trying to correlate a score, right,
Yeah.
with performance.
Mm-hmm.
So injury is peripheral to this. And so don't bring injury into this yet. Okay. That's a different study. Okay.
Right.
So
Right.
just be
Yeah.
careful when we start doing that. It was performance based here, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why I did it, is because serves was more performance based to the ratings. So it was like tennis performance, serves, and then get it down to lower levels, which is the isokinetic strength level. So if the isokinetic strength is correlated with the serves, and if the serves are correlated with the tennis ratings, are the tennis ratings correlated with the isokinetic testing at that lower level? So it was kind of A equals B equals C. So it does A equals C kind of a thing. for me. But yeah, makes sense. What you're suggesting kind of makes more sense. I would makes it a lot more logical that it would have been more correlated with the backhand stroke with the other variables that we used.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
It was a good job, Gouresh.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
If there are no other questions, I'd like to thank Gouresh and any guests they had with him for attending. The committee will kind of go back and forth. I think, I don't know the best way, because you're hosting now, Gouresh, so maybe email things, something like that, to discuss if necessary. All right.
Right. Yeah.
Good
I
job.
will discuss. I will send you all the presentation and we can break it down more in the next few days.
All right.
Gouresh, I've got edits on your document, and I'll send you that and copy Dr. Olson on that as soon as we're done here. Okay. All right.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Yep.
Good job.
All right. All right. Thank you all for being here. I recorded this and I will have a recording on YouTube soon. I'll send you the links to it too. Thank you.
Thank you.